Well, good evening from London, and thank you very much indeed for joining me for another Harif talk. Harif, for those who don't know us, is of course the UK Association of Jews from the Middle East and North Africa, and we aim to educate about the history, heritage, and culture of those Jews. We've got a website, www.harif.org. And in order to receive details of our Zooms, you need to be subscribed. Very easy, just go to our website and you will get all the details. We've got a sister website which keeps you up to date with the news. It's called Point of No Return. A lot happening at the moment in terms of news, so do subscribe to that as well. You can access it by going to the Harif website and clicking on news. This session is being recorded. I hope the recording will be up in a matter of hours, and all you have to do is go to videos on the Harif website. And you can also look at all our past recordings. There are over 130 of them. And it sort of constitutes quite an important archive now. There'll be a chance for you to make comments or ask questions. Um, and as Lawrence said, just make sure that you use your real name and not iPad or iPhone. So before I embark on tonight's talk, I'd just like to say a word about the current situation, just to say that our thoughts, all those of us at Harif, our thoughts and our prayers are with Israel in its current conflict with Iran. And we're thinking of you over there, and we wish Israel all the best. So, the subject of tonight's talk, and I am the person giving it, is something quite unusual for us, actually. It's a bit outside our usual remit of the Muslim and the Arab world, although there is a connection. The rise and fall of the Rothschilds of the East. Now, a lot of people have thought that I was going to talk about the Sassoons, who, of course, also merit that epithet of the Rothschilds of the East. But in this case, I'm going to be talking about the Camondos, who are probably less well known. So I will be sharing my screen. Just a second. That's right. That one. Okay. There we go. I hope you can all see that. The Camondos, rise and fall of a dynasty. So if you are planning to go to Paris this summer, or if you're able to go to Paris, I recommend that you visit number 63 Rue de Monceau in the 8th district or arrondissement if you haven't already been there. This is the Nissim de Camondo Museum, one of Paris's less well-known attractions, but a must-see nonetheless. The house belonged to a Jewish banker named Moïse de Camondo, scion of a family known as the Rothschilds of the East, and it was bequeathed to the French nation. Whoops. Just one second. Sorry, I'm a bit stuck here. Going forward. Let's see. Okay. So the Musée Nissim de Camondo houses one of the world's most exquisite collections of 18th century furniture and objets d'art. Louis XVI armchairs, ormolu clocks, Sèvres turines and Ming vases, Aubusson tapestries, paintings by great masters. But as we shall see, the house and the objects within it are all that is left of this family. Theirs is an extraordinary story, but it ended in tragedy. The Camondo dynasty is no more. In 1850, the Plaine Monceau was still agricultural land outside the Paris city limits. Two Jewish brothers, Émile and Isaac Pereire, who made their money out of constructing railways, bought lots around the Parc Monceau. The brothers Pereire persuaded Moïse Camondo's father and uncle to buy numbers 61 and 63, Rue de Monceau. Paris was then being reconstructed by Baron Haussmann during the Second Empire. And today this area is one of the poshest districts of the city. In 1910, who was living on the Rue de Monceau? A mixed bag of Ancien Régime aristocrats on the one hand, and on the other, the plutocrats, Jewish and Protestant, who had recently made their money in industry or banking. At 7A, number 8 and number 10, old money, represented by Viscounts Curial, Montlivaud, and Bouexic. 15 years earlier, at number 8, had lived Theodor Herzl, then the Paris correspondent of Neue Freie Presse. He was covering the Dreyfus trial, an experience which would change him and the world forever. At number 47, new money, represented by Maurice de Rothschild, who inherited a mansion built by his uncle Alphonse. At number 55 lived the Katawi family, prominent Egyptian Jews who had founded banks and industries. Number 81 was the home of Charles Efrussi, scion of the wealthy Jewish family from Odessa, and described in Edmond de Waal's book, The Hare with the Amber Eyes. Émile Zola used Moïse's mansion at number 63 as the model for his satire on the lives of the extravagantly wealthy and flashy nouveau riche. And that book was called La Curée. The Camondo residence was meant to recall the Petit Trianon at Versailles, and when he took over number 63, Moïse spent 3 years gutting the building, keeping only the facade. Like Charles Efrussi and the Rothschilds, Moïse de Camondo was a great collector. The house was sometimes designed around the furniture. For instance, he built an alcove to accommodate a bureau by the great 18th century carpenter Saunier. The Camondo residence exuded good taste, but was not ostentatious. Amid the sumptuous Ancien Régime furniture, Moïse did not stint on mod cons. For instance, he installed a lift and an electric cooker. The bathrooms would not be out of place in a luxury hotel today. The building also had 9 water closets, fitted with a special silent flush. In the grounds, Moïse's son Nissim had a collection of cars, and his daughter Beatrice, mad on horses, had her stables. But if you look for Judaica in the house, you will be disappointed. Moise's father included a family chapel adorned with Judaica brought from Constantinople. Torah crowns, menorahs, yads, and even a Torah scroll with the inscription, "This case and its Torah scroll belong to the famed, esteemed, superb, lordly, influential Prince of Israel, Senor Abraham of the Camondo lineage. May God protect him." All this Moïse gave away. Most of it was dispersed in 1910 when Moïse was rebuilding the home, and suddenly there was no need for a family chapel. Moïse even gave away the silver Torah breastplate with the Ten Commandments that his father gave him for his bar mitzvah. After Moise's death, prayer books in red leather embossed with his grandfather's initials were retrieved and returned to the house to show that the family had some connection, however tenuous, with Judaism. Moise threw himself into furnishing the house with his collection of Louis XVI furniture around the time that his wife Irene left him. More about her later. He used new money to collect old objects bought from auctions or antique shops. The study with its magnificent tapestries, the great drawing room, the circular wood-paneled library, which you see here, where Moïse would study auction catalogues. He acquired wood carvings from chateaux that were being demolished. He particularly liked buying pairs of objects and was obsessed by symmetry. So who were the Camondos and where did they come from? The Camondos came to France from the Ottoman Empire, where they were successful bankers. And this earned them the nickname Rothschilds of the East. In truth, the Camondos spent far more time in Europe than in the Levant. They were an old Sephardi family expelled from Spain after the 1492 Inquisition. For 3 centuries, they traded between Venice, Trieste, Vienna, and Turkey. Their name is supposed to come from Camondo, meaning the house of the world. It might have been borrowed from a town in the Veneto, or perhaps it referred to the fact they were great international traders. From Spain, they would have moved to Venice in the early 16th century. As Sephardim, they would have enjoyed certain privileges denied to Ashkenazim in Venice. After Napoleon's invasion, Lombardy-Veneto became Austrian, and so did the family. They moved to Turkey, where they were particularly successful. Moise's ancestor Haim traded in French sheets, Indian spices, precious stones. But something happened to cause Haim to be expelled from Turkey overnight to Cyprus. Apparently, he was accused of intriguing against the Sultan. He was threatened with execution and managed to obtain Austrian papers. He threw himself at the feet of the Holy Roman Emperor Joseph II, pleading for his protection, which the emperor then granted. It is said that Haim kissed that part of the emperor's robe where he kept his purse. The emperor laughed. "You would do better to kiss your own purse. You have more money than I do." The Camondos helped finance the building of the Sephardi Synagogue of Trieste in 1780, which was then part of the Habsburg Empire. 2 years later, the Camondos returned to Constantinople and got back some of the property impounded by the Sultan. Sorry, it's just got stuck. The Camondos So it was during their sojourn in Ottoman Turkey that the Camondos became known as the Rothschilds of the East. It became a figure of speech to describe a spendthrift woman. In Ladino, they would say, "Who do you think you are? Hija de Camondo or Mujer de Camondo?" Abraham Solomon Camondo became the richest man in a population of 200,000 Jews. They were sarafs, treasurers, lending money to the Sultan's counselors as well as members of the imperial family. They were known as the kings of the Jews and Jews of the kings. One German guest wrote in his diary that he was so impressed by the silver and gilt at the Camondo Seder. The women were also bedecked in gold and silver. The Camondos belonged to a Sephardi elite known as the Francos, most of whom were from Livorno. They were traditional Jews, but also sometimes Freemasons. The Camondos were capable of making a stand against what they considered to be reactionary tendencies in the community. For instance, they confronted a rabbi who was resisting secular education and had threatened them with excommunication. They got the rabbi jailed. But the Camondos were prevented by a decree from becoming leaders of the Jewish community. As Francos, they were foreigners. Later, the Francos set up their own synagogue, the Comunità Israelitica Straniera. Members included the Modiano, Morpurgo, Tedeschi, Piperno, Veneziani, Fernandez, Luzzati, and Viterbo families, all originally from Venice or Livorno. However, the rise of the Camondos in the Ottoman Empire was not by any means a foregone conclusion. Three Jewish families were sarafs to the Ottomans: Carmona, Agiman, and Gabbai. They had close relations with the Janissaries. These were the Christian mercenaries converted to Islam who held power at the heart of the Ottoman army. In 1826, the Sultan fell out with the Janissaries and massacred them. He also had the leading Saraf, Carmona, assassinated and stole his assets. That way, the Sultan did not have to repay his debts. Armenian bankers replaced the Jews. This was a time when the Ottoman Empire was under Western pressure to abrogate the dhimmi rules, which subjugated the non-Muslim minorities. But no emancipation followed. When his brother Isaac died childless from the plague, Abraham Salomon Camondo succeeded him as the head of the family bank. Abraham owned property in Galata in Constantinople. This was all the more remarkable because foreigners could not own property, and he used to register it in the name of Ottoman friends. Then Abraham obtained a firman, a decree from the Sultan, allowing him and him alone permission to own property. Soon, every part of Constantinople bore the Camondo mark, and especially the district of Galata. In the Haskoy cemetery, the Camondo mausoleum was conceded to Jews by imperial decree. And here you see the Camondo steps in Galata, and the stairs were built specially to link the street where Camondo lived to the street where he worked. And the stairs were used by his children who studied at the top at St. George's Austrian High School. And this was the Camondo mansion. which is now a Turkish government property. In 1840, Sir Moses Montefiore went on his famous mission to see the Sultan following the Damascus affair. The Damascus affair, you'll recall, was an episode where Jews in Syria were falsely accused of murdering a Christian in order to make matzah. Um, and so Moses Montefiore set off with Adolphe Crémieux to go and plead for these Jews to be released. So they went to see the Sultan. Camondo put Sir Moses Montefiore in one of his houses for the fast of Yom Kippur. Abraham Solomon Camondo escorted Sir Moses around the city. The family remained philanthropists and supporters of the Alliance Israélite Universelle schools network. They helped the poor and Jews in trouble. They built Jewish day schools, hospitals, and welfare organizations. And when natural disasters occurred in Constantinople, such as the plague and fire of 1863, the Camondos were on hand to help. On the international stage, the Camondos helped finance the 1853 to 56 Ottoman War. They were represented at the marriage of the Habsburg Emperor Franz Joseph with Princess Elizabeth. They were court Jews linked with other prominent families, the Alatinis of Salonika, Bleischroeder of Berlin, the Sassoons of London, and of course, the Rothschilds. And this is the mausoleum, the family mausoleum where the dead were buried in Constantinople. Here is a family tree. It's not complete because it doesn't actually show the patriarch of the family, Abraham Solomon Camondo. It shows his son, and then you can see Nissim de Camondo, who was Moise's father, and Moise, the large picture in the middle, and then his children below him. And this is an envelope my husband found. Actually, he collects these things. And it was actually sent from the Rothschilds of the East to the Rothschilds of the West. And I have it here. It was actually sent from Isaac de Camondo. But disaster struck Abraham Solomon. His granddaughter Rebecca died aged 30, his son Raphael at the age of 55, and he lost his wife Clara, aged 75. It was a measure of the esteem that Abraham Solomon was held in his city, that all religions joined the funeral procession for Clara, his wife. The Greek Orthodox bishop and 4 priests turned up to accompany the hearse. Church bells rang out. The funeral of Abraham Solomon's son was even more impressive. While Ladino prayers were recited, Armenian priests swung incense burners. The Camondos were decorated by the Ottomans for services rendered, but they had also been honoured by the Austrian emperor. The Camondos helped finance Italian unity and in 1861 became naturalized Italians. When Venice was united with the rest of Italy, the title of Count of Camondo was conferred on Abraham Solomon by Victor Emmanuel II. It was a matter of honor that the title was not bought, as in the case of many nouveau riches. it was bestowed. The Camondos were not to be parted from their Italian nationality. Abraham Solomon was still active at 84. His grandsons, Abraham Bohor and Nissim, took over the running of the bank. In 1869, they decided to move the bank to Paris. The grand old man followed them, but died in 1873, aged 93. He had two funerals, one in Paris and one in Constantinople. In the Ottoman capital, the coffin was escorted by two battalions, diplomats, financiers, clergy, choirs, and of course members of the Jewish community. It was an unparalleled tribute, an honor reserved for royalty. Abraham Solomon was buried in the family mausoleum at Haskell. Back in France, Napoleon III's reign gave way to the Third Republic. Alsace-Lorraine had been annexed by Germany. The great immigration of Russian Jews fleeing pogroms was just beginning. Continuing the family's tradition of philanthropy, Nissim de Camondo, that's Moïse's father, donated towards the establishment of Paris's first Sephardi synagogue at the Rue Buffo. Nissim and his cousin Isaac sat on the synagogue board, on the consistoire, which is the sort of representative body for French Jewry, and the Alliance Israélite Universelle, who ran the network of schools for the Jewish communities. But the 1880s saw the rise of anti-Semitism in France. 95 bankers out of 400 were Jewish, but people thought they all were. When the bank Union Générale crashed in 1882, the Rothschilds were blamed. The Camondos could have been seen as the archetypal rootless cosmopolitans, buying up a heritage which did not belong to them. Levantine, multilingual, belonging nowhere but at ease everywhere. They were associated with the Panama Canal scandal. They had shares in the Panama Canal Company. And then there was the Dreyfus trial, which split French society into two camps. But the Camondos did not speak out. They were too busy being French. Nissim, Moïse's father, died aged only 59 from pneumonia, and his brother Abraham Bahor, that's Moïse's uncle, contracted a chest infection and died at 69. Nissim's nephew Isaac and his son Moïse took over the bank. Isaac was a fascinating character. He was an avid collector of Far Eastern and Impressionistic art. He never married, but had mistresses and two illegitimate children. He was bored by the bank. He was a polymath, a composer, a patron of composers like Debussy and Charpentier. He paid a record sum, well, this was his collection of artworks. He paid a record sum for this painting here, which was The Hangman's House by Paul Cézanne. He paid 6,200 francs when a comparable work might have fetched 200 francs. When Isaac died, aged 60, from an embolism, all the works he collected were bequeathed to Salle de Donation Camondo in the Louvre. There were 804 works from his collection, including his bed, and they are today scattered among 5 major Parisian museums. And here's Rouen Cathedral, painted by Monet, The Tub by Edgar Degas, The Fife Player by Edouard Manet. I think that is today at the Musée d'Orsay. So Moïse was quite a different character. He had lost an eye hunting and wore a monocle. He married Irène Cahin d'Anvers. Her family, or d'Anvers, I should say, her family was a wealthy Ashkenazi banking family from Antwerp who founded Paris-Bas. They adopted Anvers, the French name for Antwerp, even though Napoleon had banned people taking on towns' names. People mocked him as the Comte à l'envers, which means the upside down count. Louis Cahin d'Anvers married Louise Morpurgo from Trieste. Irène was one of the three daughters of Louis Cahin d'Anvers. And these were her sisters, Elizabeth and Alice, painted by Renoir. The collector and art critic Charles Ephrussi introduced Louis Cahin d'Anvers to Pierre-Auguste Renoir. So the artist painted Irene's sisters, Elizabeth and Alice, and the painting is called Pink and Blue. And he also painted Mademoiselle Irène Cahen d'Anvers, and here she is. She was not yet 10. She was a stunning redhead. Her father fell out with Renoir. He was not happy with his work and hung the portrait in the servants' quarters. No price was set in advance. Renoir was upset with the 1,500 francs paid to him, and this might explain why Renoir has something of a reputation as an anti-Semite. We don't know. Moïse and Irène were married at the Grand Synagogue La Victoire in Paris. Irène was 18 while Moïse was 31. Irène had two children, Nissim and Beatrice. It seems that Moïse was rather quiet, serious, and a workaholic. He probably bored Irène. Soon she was having affairs, as her mother Louise had done. One of Louise's lovers included King Alphonse of Spain. Moïse and Irène's marriage lasted 5 years. Then Irène fell madly in love with an Italian count, Charles Sampieri, who managed the Camondos stables. Irène left Moïse for him, announced her conversion to Catholicism, and remarried in church. Her father disinherited Irène. After their divorce, Moïse got custody of the children, Beatrice and Nissim, and they continued to live with him at number 63, although Irène did see them often. But Moïse was a broken man. He became more subdued and never remarried. With age, he became more and more deaf. On the 22-year-old fight in the French Air Force. 40% of war volunteers were Jews. He got his pilot's license, became a lieutenant, and received 5 citations for bravery, the Croix de Guerre, and a posthumous Légion d'honneur. And this photo was taken in 1916 and shows Moïse and Nissim chatting in the garden at number 63. On the 3rd of September 1917, on a reconnaissance mission, Nissim's plane was shot down. On the 27th of September, Nissim's death was confirmed. At first, he was buried with the Germans, and the French government refused to exhume the body. It was only after the end of the war that Moïse was able to rebury his son in the family vault in Montmartre. A memorial service for Nissim was held at the Synagogue de la Victoire. It turned out that Nissim had had a non-Jewish girlfriend called Renée d'Orville. He wrote letters to her saying she was the love of his life. He bequeathed 100,000 francs to her, but Moïse would not allow her to visit his grave. Beatrice married Léon Reynac. Moïse would have approved of this Jewish dynastic marriage, although the two families were quite different. Léon was the son of Théodore Reynac, a cultured man. Théodore was an archaeologist, mathematician, musician, and an author of a history of the Jews. He was also married to the niece of Charles Ephrussi. Beatrice's husband, Léon, was a dilettante who played chess and composed music. The Reinachs had the intellectual curiosity lacking in the Camondos. Beatrice did not seem to have much in common with her husband. A bit deaf like her father, she was a redhead like her mother Irene, and like her, she loved horses. Léon and Beatrice had two children, who you see here, Bertrand and Fanny. On the 14th of November 1935, Moïse died, aged 75. He was buried in the Camondo Mausoleum in Montmartre. 10 years previously, he had bequeathed his mansion to the Musée des Arts Décoratifs. Everything at number 63 was to stay as it was. No object could be lent out. The museum was to be dedicated to the two Nissims, Moïse's father and his son, who died for the glory of France. In 1940, the Germans invaded France and imposed their anti-Jewish measures. In 1941, Léon battled in vain to save his assets and left for the Vichy-controlled South with Bertrand. Beatrice did not want to leave Paris. She rode in the Bois de Boulogne, escorted by a German officer. It was said that she had even hunted with Goering before the war. In 1942, mother and daughter were arrested in Neuilly, a suburb of Paris. On that day, they were not wearing the yellow star. Why did Beatrice not try and escape, as Léon tried to persuade her to do? She did not think of herself as Jewish. She may have thought she was protected by the Nazis. Her brother had given his life for France. She had a sense that she was untouchable. Léon and his son Bertrand were betrayed on their way to Spain. In 1943, Léon was sent to Drancy. He was 50 and in feeble health. The French ambassador to Berlin tried to intervene, to no avail. On the 20th of November 1943, Léon and Bertrand were gassed on arrival at Auschwitz. Fanny and Beatrice were on Convoy 69 to Auschwitz. Fanny died of typhus. It is thought Beatrice was gassed on the 4th of January 1945, 2 weeks before the camp was liberated. Moïse's divorced wife Irene outlived them all. She survived the war in Paris, protected by her Italian surname. And what happened to the famous painting by Renoir? The Germans had seized caseloads of Jewish-owned works of art sent for safekeeping by the national museums to the Château de Chambord. Renoir's portrait of Mademoiselle Irene was chosen by Goering for his wife. After the war, Irene came face to face with the portrait of her childhood self, number 41 in an exhibition of looted Nazi art. It was restituted to her, but she had never liked the painting. She arranged to sell it. Today it is in the Bürle Foundation in Zurich. Irene died in poverty in 1963. She had squandered all the money she had inherited from her daughter Beatrice in the casinos of the French Riviera. But her picture is more popular than ever. If you actually Google the girl with the blue ribbon or Little Irene, you will see posters, jigsaws, mugs, and t-shirts of her. She's really become an iconic image. And what became of Renoir's picture of the two little sisters, Elizabeth and Alice? Well, I came across an interesting review by Shalva Weil recently of Edmund de Val's book, Letters to Camondo. And there she says that she saw this picture in the Museum of Art in Sao Paulo, the MASP Museum. In fact, Lawrence and I saw it as well on our visit to Brazil. And she speculated as to how it actually got there. She thought that a large number of Nazis had actually ended up in Brazil, and maybe one of them had this painting in his possession and donated it to the art museum in Sao Paulo. We don't know the story. So this is the plaque at the entrance to the museum of the Musée Nissim de Camondo in Paris, a family which had survived the Spanish Inquisition and thrived for 4 centuries, had gone up in smoke. At the Camondo Mausoleum in Montmartre, however, a memorial plaque says, bizarrely, that Beatrice and Léon Reynac and their children died for France, mort pour la France. However badly they wanted to think of themselves as French, the truth is, I believe, they died because they were Jews. And so that's that's the end of that. Very happy to answer questions if I can. Oops. Sorry. Are there any questions in the chat or any comments? Everyone's stunned silence. Thank you very much for the compliments. Oh, good. Etty's going to Paris in August. It's a great area, actually. There's some interesting things to see there. The eighth
Yeah,
arrondissement.
there was a comment that the museum is closed until 2026 for refurbishment.
Is it? Oh no. Oh gosh. That's a shame. You just have to be patient.
Okay, shall I turn off the recording now? On behalf of Harif, I'd like to thank Lynn for a fabulous talk tonight, as always. Bit close to home.
Thank you.
And
No, I think there are some comments. Hang on 1 second. Uh, there's some. I'm glad to see that Shalva is here. Hope she's not in the bomb shelter. Thank you. Well, she says I gave her some new information. You gave me some new information, Shalva. I just want to mention this book that was actually written quite recently by Edmund de Waal, the man who wrote The Hare with the Amber Eyes, an absolutely stunning book. And Edmund de Waal wrote this book, which was composed of 58 imaginary letters that he wrote to Moïse de Camondo. And of course, Edmund de Waal is a descendant of the Ephrussi family, who were also dispossessed by the Nazis. And they lived opposite in the same street in the Rue de Monceau as the Camondos. I think
Well, what
Lawrence
I'll do is
Jeffrey
I'll
wants
turn off the
to say
recording
something.
now and then open it up for questions, I think, Lynn. We'll stop recording.